You're perfect just the way you are." That's what Lynette's mother breathed into her hair each night, her gentle hands tending to burns that mapped her daughter's skin like a cartographer charting hell. But when you grow up wolfless in a world where power is everything and weakness is unforgivable, you discover that perfection has conditions. And Lynette Riggs would discover that the deepest wounds aren't carved into flesh, they're the ones that make an alpha king drop to his knees and weep for a girl the world taught to believe she was nothing. Chapter 1. The Omega's Daughter. The kitchen of the Crescent Moon Pack house smelled like betrayal wrapped in cinnamon. Lynette Riggs had learned to measure time by the scent of whatever meal she was preparing. Morning meant coffee bitter and scalding, like the looks the pack members gave her when she dared meet their eyes. Afternoon brought the yeasty warmth of rising bread, a brief respite that fooled her into thinking today might be different. But evening always smelled like cinnamon rolls, and cinnamon rolls meant the Alpha's family dinner, which meant her half-sister Cassandra would parade through the kitchen in whatever new dress their father had bought her, making sure Lynette knew exactly where she stood in the hierarchy of his affections. Which was to say, nowhere. You missed a spot. Lynette didn't need to turn around to know that Cassandra Blair, she'd taken their father's surname when he'd acknowledged her. Unlike Lynette, who kept her mother's name like a badge of shame, was standing in the doorway, one perfectly manicured nail pointing at the already spotless counter. "I'll clean it again," Lynette said softly, keeping her eyes down. Submission. Always submission. It was the only language that kept the beatings to a minimum. "You'll clean it now," Cassandra corrected, her voice saccharine sweet in that way that meant she was enjoying this. "The Alpha King arrives tomorrow, and Father says everything must be perfect, which means you need to be invisible. More invisible than usual. If that's even possible for someone so." She paused, and Lynette could feel her half-sister's critical gaze traveling over her oversized kitchen dress, her tangled brown hair, her hands that were perpetually stained with dish soap and marked with burn scars from years of kitchen accidents that no one had ever bothered to heal properly. "Unfortunate looking," Cassandra finished. "Honestly, I don't know why Father even keeps you around. Your mother is just the head maid. You're not even pack. No wolf, no future, no point. No wolf." The words hit like they always did, a familiar punch to the gut that Lynette had never learned to brace for. 18 years old. And her wolf had never emerged. 18 years of waiting for that moment every werewolf dreamed of, when your beast would rise and you'd finally feel complete. 18 years of nothing but silence, where a second soul should have been. "The king is coming to choose a mate," Cassandra continued, and now her voice held a dreamy quality that made Lynette's stomach turn. "Father says I have a real chance. I'm beautiful, I'm strong, my wolf is one of the finest in the pack. And once I'm queen," she leaned in close, her breath hot against Lynette's ear, "once I'm queen, I'll make sure you understand exactly what happens to useless, wolfless things who share my blood." Lynette's hands trembled as she scrubbed the already clean counter. She wanted to say something, anything. Wanted to point out that they shared a father, that somewhere in Cassandra's perfect life there should be room for the compassion that siblings were supposed to show each other. But she'd learned years ago that wanting things didn't make them real. "Cassandra!" Their father's voice boomed from the dining hall. "Stop tormenting the help and get in here. We need to discuss your presentation for tomorrow." The help. Not his daughter. Never his daughter. Cassandra smirked, flipping her golden hair over one shoulder. "Don't burn dinner, half-breed. I'd hate for you to embarrass Father in front of the Alpha King." The kitchen fell silent after Cassandra left, filled only with the sound of Lynette's ragged breathing and the timer ticking down on the oven. 15 minutes, until the cinnamon rolls were done. 15 minutes of peace, before her mother would return from turning down the Luna's bed, and they'd have to navigate another evening of pretending that their lives were somehow tolerable. Lynette's hands went to her arms unconsciously, tracing the raised edges of scars that decorated her skin like a roadmap of every time she'd been too slow, too clumsy, too present for the pack's liking. Some were from legitimate accidents. The kitchen was dangerous when you worked 16-hour days starting at age 8. But others were from Cassandra's friends, who thought it was funny to test their claws on someone who couldn't fight back. From pack members who needed to feel powerful and knew that the wolfless daughter of an Omega Maid was the safest target. From a father who'd made it clear that his reputation was more important than protecting a child he'd never wanted in the first place. The oven timer dinged. Lynette pulled out the cinnamon rolls, their scent filling the kitchen with a false warmth that mocked the ice in her chest. Perfect golden spirals, each one identical to the last. Beautiful. Flawless. Everything she wasn't. She was arranging them on the serving platter when she heard a sound that didn't belong in the careful quiet she'd cultivated. Footsteps, heavy ones. And they were coming toward the kitchen. Panic flared. No one came to the kitchen during dinner prep except to criticize or punish. Lynette quickly wiped her hands on her apron, schooling her features into the blank mask of submission that had become her default expression. The door swung open, but it wasn't Cassandra, or her father, or even one of the pack warriors who sometimes accidentally backed her into corners when no one was looking. It was her mother, and Sarah Riggs was crying. "Mama?" Lynette's voice cracked on the word. Her mother never cried. Not when the Luna screamed at her for imagined slights. Not when the pack whispered about the shameful Omega, who'd let an alpha use her, and then had the audacity to keep the wolfless result. Not even when Lynette came home bleeding and her mother had to patch her up with trembling hands and helpless rage in her eyes. Sarah Riggs never cried. Until now. "Mama, what's wrong?" Lynette rushed forward, but her mother held up a hand, stopping her. "Don't," Sarah whispered. "Don't touch me right now, baby. I'm so angry I might. She took a shuddering breath. "The Alpha King arrives tomorrow." "I know," Cassandra told me. "Did she tell you why he's really coming?" Sarah's laugh was bitter, broken. "It's not just to choose a mate. Alpha Winston received a message 3 days ago. The king is coming because there have been reports of abuse in our pack. He's coming to investigate." Lynette's blood went cold. "Mama, your father," Sarah continued, her voice shaking with suppressed fury. "Your father told me that if the king asks questions, if he sees anything unusual, I'm to say that you're clumsy, that you've always been accident-prone, that every scar, every bruise, every broken bone you've ever had was your own fault." The kitchen tilted. Lynette gripped the counter to stay upright. "He said," Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper, "that if I don't lie for him, if I don't protect the pack's reputation, he'll invoke his rights as your father and have you sent to the breeding facility on the border. The one where they send wolfless girls to?" Her voice broke entirely. "Oh, baby. My sweet baby. What have I done? I should have run the moment I knew I was pregnant. Should have taken you somewhere, anywhere. But I was scared and stupid, and now, Mama." "Stop." Lynette found her voice. Found her strength in the only place she'd ever been able to find it in protecting the one person who'd ever loved her. "It's okay. I'll be careful. I'll stay out of sight. The king won't even know I exist." "Lynn, I mean it. I'm good at being invisible, remember?" Cassandra said so herself. She forced a smile that felt like swallowing glass. "I'll be fine." But even as she said the words, even as she watched her mother's face crumple with relief and guilt in equal measure, Lynette knew the truth. Tomorrow, the Alpha King would arrive, and nothing would ever be fine again. Chapter 2. When kings kneel, the Alpha King arrived with the dawn, and he brought winter with him. Lynette felt it the moment his convoy crossed into pack territory, a shift in the air that made every wolf in the pack house go still and silent. She was in the kitchen, naturally, had been there since 4 a.m, preparing the breakfast feast that would welcome their sovereign. Her hands were dusted with flour, her hair tied back in a braid that did nothing to hide how plain she was, her arms covered by long sleeves despite the heat of the kitchen ovens. Always covered, always hidden. "He's here," her mother whispered, appearing in the doorway with sheets bundled in her arms. Sarah's eyes were red-rimmed from a sleepless night, but her face was carefully blank, the face of an Omega who knew how to survive. "Lynn, baby, remember what I said. Stay in the kitchen. Don't go near the receiving hall. Don't." "I know, Mama." Lynette kept her voice soft, soothing. "I'll be invisible." Sarah nodded, but her hands trembled as she adjusted Lynette's sleeves, making sure they covered every inch of scarred skin. "If he asks about you, he won't." Why would an Alpha King care about a wolfless kitchen girl? The question hung in the air, unanswered, because they both knew the truth. He wouldn't. In the hierarchy of the werewolf world, Lynette existed somewhere below furniture and only slightly above actual vermin. Her mother left, and Lynette returned to her work. Eggs Benedict for the Alpha King. The recipe had been very specific in the instructions Alpha Winston had barked at her yesterday. Perfectly poached eggs, hollandaise sauce that was silky smooth, Canadian bacon cooked to exact specifications. Every detail mattered. Every element had to be flawless. Because if it wasn't, Lynette would pay the price. Through the kitchen window, she could see the convoy pulling up to the pack house. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, flanked by motorcycles carrying warriors whose presence alone made the air feel heavier. The pack's strongest fighters had assembled in the courtyard, a show of force that was also a show of respect. Alpha Winston stood at the front, Cassandra at his side in a dress that probably cost more than Lynette would earn in a lifetime. The door of the center SUV opened, and the Alpha King stepped out. Lynette's hands stilled on the whisk she'd been using. Even from a distance, even through a grimy kitchen window, she could feel the power rolling off him in waves. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with dark hair that caught the morning sun and shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of every pack in the kingdom. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator who'd never known what it felt like to be prey. Alpha Taylor Burke. The youngest Alpha King in 3 centuries, crowned at 25 when his father had fallen in battle against rogues. The stories about him were legendary, how he'd killed 17 rogues by himself that day, how he'd torn through them with a fury that suggested he was more monster than man, how he'd taken the throne with blood still wet on his claws and declared that any pack that harbored weakness would answer to him personally. Lynette shivered and returned to her cooking. Men like that didn't have mercy for creatures like her. The morning crawled by in a haze of preparation. She made enough food to feed an army, and judging by the warriors she could see through the window, that's essentially what had arrived. Platters of eggs, mountains of bacon, fresh fruit artfully arranged, pastries that she'd been up until midnight preparing. Everything perfect, everything beautiful, everything she wasn't. Girl. The head cook, a stern woman named Miriam, who'd never bothered to learn Lynette's actual name, snapped her fingers. The Alpha King's beta is requesting fresh coffee. Take it to the dining hall, now. Lynette's blood turned to ice. I can't. I'm supposed to stay. Did I ask what you're supposed to do? Miriam's eyes flashed yellow, her wolf rising in annoyance. The beta wants coffee. You're going to bring it, unless you'd like me to tell Alpha Winston that you refused a direct order from the king's second in command. There was no choice. There was never a choice. Lynette loaded a silver service tray with the coffee carafe and cups, her hands shaking so badly that the china rattled. She could do this. Just walk in, set down the tray, and walk out. Keep her eyes down, be invisible, be nothing. The walk from the kitchen to the dining hall felt like walking to an execution. Every step echoed in her ears. Every breath felt too loud. The long sleeves of her dress suddenly felt too thin, too inadequate to hide what needed to stay hidden. The doors to the dining hall were open. Lynette paused at the threshold, taking in the scene before her. The Alpha King sat at the head of the table, his presence dominating the room even though he was perfectly still. Alpha Winston was to his right, talking animatedly about pack statistics and territory borders. Cassandra was across from the king, her posture perfect, her smile dazzling, her eyes calculating as she tracked his every movement. And around the table sat the king's inner circle warriors, who looked like they'd been carved from stone and tempered in fire. Ah, coffee. Alpha Winston's voice boomed. Come in, girl, don't just stand there. Lynette forced her feet to move. One step. Another. The silver tray felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She kept her eyes on the floor, navigating by memory and instinct. She was halfway to the table when it happened. Her foot caught on the edge of a rug that someone had shifted during the meal. The tray tilted. The coffee carafe, heavy, scalding, expensive, began to fall. Lynette's training kicked in. She twisted, sacrificing her own body to save the carafe, letting the boiling liquid splash across her sleeve instead of shattering the expensive china. The pain was immediate and excruciating. The coffee soaked through the fabric, hitting skin that was already scarred, already damaged. Lynette bit down on her lip hard enough to draw blood, swallowing the scream that wanted to tear from her throat. Don't make a scene. Don't draw attention. Be invisible. Clumsy Omega trash. Alpha Winston's voice cracked like a whip. Get out. You're embarrassing me in front of the king. Lynette set the tray down with trembling hands. Miraculously, she'd saved everything but her own arm and turned to flee. Wait. The word was spoken softly, but it cut through the room like a blade. The Alpha King's voice. Lynette froze, every instinct screaming at her to run, but unable to disobey a direct command from someone so powerful. "Come here," the king said. "Your Majesty, she's just a servant." Alpha Winston interjected quickly. "Wolfless, unfortunately. Not even really pack." "I apologize for the disruption," I said. "Come here." Lynette's feet moved without her permission. Closer, closer, until she was standing directly beside the Alpha King, close enough to smell cedar and night air and something wild that made her soul ache with longing for a wolf she'd never have. "Look at me." She couldn't. She physically could not force her eyes upward. A hand, large, warm, surprisingly gentle, touched her chin, tilting her face up. And Lynette found herself staring into eyes that were the color of amber and fire. Eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall she'd ever built, every defense she'd ever constructed. The Alpha King studied her face for a long moment. His thumb traced the curve of her jaw, barely touching, and Lynette felt something crack in her chest, something that had been frozen for so long she'd forgotten it could thaw. "Your arm," he said softly. "You're burned." "It's nothing, Your Majesty." "Show me." "No, I mean it's fine, I don't." His eyes flashed, not with anger, but with something else. Something that looked almost like pain? "Show me your arm," he repeated, and this time, it wasn't a request. With shaking hands, Lynette began to roll up her sleeve. The fabric stuck where the coffee had soaked through, pulling at burned skin. She gritted her teeth and kept rolling, revealing inch after inch of scarred flesh. Old burns, claw marks, the silvery lines of cuts that had healed poorly, a roadmap of abuse that no amount of excuses could explain away. She heard Cassandra's sharp intake of breath, heard Alpha Winston start to speak, probably to spin another lie about how clumsy and accident-prone she was. But she didn't hear any of that, not really. Because the Alpha King had gone perfectly, terrifyingly still. His hand had wrapped around her wrist carefully, so carefully, as if she were made of glass and might shatter. His thumb traced one of the longer scars, a claw mark that ran from her elbow to her wrist. And his expression, Lynette had never seen an Alpha look like that. Like someone had reached into his chest and torn out his heart. "Who did this to you?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. I'm clumsy, Your Majesty. I fall a lot. The kitchen is dangerous. Don't." The word cracked. And then, impossibly, the Alpha King, the most powerful werewolf in the kingdom, the warrior who'd killed 17 rogues single-handedly, the sovereign who commanded the loyalty of thousands, did something that would haunt Lynette for the rest of her life. He slipped from his chair and fell to his knees before her. "Forgive me," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Forgive me for not finding you sooner." The dining hall erupted into chaos, but Lynette heard none of it, because the Alpha King was staring up at her with tears streaming down his face, and he was whispering one word over and over again like a prayer, like a curse, like a promise. "Mate." Chapter 3. The Ultimatum. The word hung in the air like shattered glass, sharp, dangerous, impossible to take back. Mate. Lynette's brain refused to process it. Couldn't process it. Because wolves didn't have mates. Wolfless girls who existed somewhere between human and werewolf, who'd never felt the call of the moon or the song of a beast in their soul, they didn't get mates. They especially didn't get Alpha Kings who knelt before them with tears on their faces and agony in their eyes. "That's impossible." Alpha Winston's voice cut through her shock. "She's wolfless. She can't be anyone's mate, let alone..." Silence. The Alpha King's command rippled through the room with physical force, and every wolf present, including Alpha Winston, dropped their heads in automatic submission. Every wolf except Lynette, who had no wolf to force her submission, and Cassandra, whose face had gone from beautiful to twisted with a rage so profound it was almost impressive. The king rose to his feet slowly, never breaking eye contact with Lynette. His hand was still wrapped around her scarred wrist, his touch impossibly gentle for someone who could snap her bones without effort. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lynette." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Lynette Riggs." "Lynette." He said it like he was tasting something sacred. "I'm Taylor." "And you're mine," The possessiveness in that last word should have terrified her. Instead, something warm unfurled in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Your Majesty." Cassandra's voice was silk over steel as she stepped forward. "Surely there's been a mistake. The mate bond requires 2 wolves too." "There's no mistake." Taylor's eyes never left Lynette's face. "I know what I feel. I know who she is to me. But she's nothing." Cassandra's composure cracked, her voice rising. "She's a wolfless bastard child who doesn't even have a place in this pack. How can the moon goddess pair the alpha king with that?" Lynette flinched at the venom in her half-sister's voice, and she felt Taylor's grip on her wrist tighten not painfully, but protectively. "Choose your next words very carefully," Taylor said, his voice dropping to a lethal quiet. "Because you're talking about my mate. And I've killed for less than insults." The room went so silent that Lynette could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. "Forgive my daughter, Your Majesty." Alpha Winston stepped forward, his diplomatic mask firmly in place despite the panic in his eyes. "She's simply surprised. We all are. This is unprecedented. Perhaps we should discuss this matter privately. Allow time for—" "There's nothing to discuss." Taylor finally released Lynette's wrist, but only so he could shrug out of his jacket. Before she could process what he was doing, he draped it over her shoulders, warm from his body heat and smelling like cedar and safety. "Lynette is my mate, which makes her your queen. I suggest everyone adjust their attitudes accordingly." "Queen." The word bounced around Lynette's head like it was in a foreign language. She wasn't even pack. She was barely a person in the eyes of the wolves around her, and now she was supposed to be queen? "I can't," she whispered. Taylor turned back to her, concern flooding his features. "Can't what, little one?" "I can't be your mate. I don't have a wolf. The bond, it won't work right. You'll be stuck with only half of what you're supposed to have, and—" The words tumbled out faster, panic rising. "You're the Alpha King. You need someone strong, someone with a powerful wolf who can stand beside you and help you rule. Someone like—" She couldn't make herself say Cassandra's name, but her eyes flicked to her half-sister involuntarily. Understanding dawned on Taylor's face, followed by something that looked like heartbreak. "Lynette, look at me." She did, and found his amber eyes blazing with an intensity that stole her breath. "I don't care about your wolf. I don't care if you have one or not. The moon goddess chose you for me, and his voice caught. "When I touched you, when I looked into your eyes, I felt complete for the first time in my life. Do you understand? Complete. Not half of anything. Whole. But, do you feel it?" he asked urgently. "Even without a wolf, can you feel the pull between us?" And goddess help her, she could. That warmth in her chest had spread, wrapping around her heart like golden chains. When he'd touched her, something inside her had sung a melody she'd never heard but somehow knew by heart. Even now, standing inches apart, she could feel an invisible thread connecting them, tugging her closer. "I feel something," she admitted. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after endless night. "That's the bond, little one. Imperfect maybe, different certainly, but ours. And I've waited 28 years to feel this. I'm not giving it up because some ignorant wolves think you're not good enough." Taylor. She'd never said his name aloud before. It felt intimate, dangerous. "You don't understand what you're asking." "I'm not, I can't." How did she explain that she didn't know how to be anything but invisible? That every instinct she had screamed at her to run before she ruined his life the way she'd apparently ruined everyone else's? "Then help me understand." He reached for her hand, the one that wasn't burned, and laced their fingers together. The gesture was so simple, so human, and yet it felt like the most significant thing that had ever happened to her. "Tell me everything. Tell me who hurt you. Tell me who made you believe you're not worth." "Your Majesty." A warrior burst through the dining hall doors, his face flushed with exertion. "Forgive the interruption, but we have a situation at the northern border. Rogue activity. They're requesting your presence immediately." Taylor's jaw clenched. "How many?" "At least a dozen, sir. Maybe more. They've already attacked one of the patrol units." For a moment Taylor looked torn, his eyes flicking between Lynette and the warrior, between his newly discovered mate and his duty as king. "Go," Lynette said softly. Your pack needs you. You're more important. People are dying. She squeezed his hand, drawing on a strength she didn't know she possessed. I'll be here when you get back. He searched her face, and she knew what he was looking for. Assurance that she wouldn't disappear the moment he turned his back. And goddess. She wanted to give him that assurance. Wanted to believe that this impossible thing between them was real and lasting. But she'd learned long ago that wanting things didn't make them true. Promise me, Taylor said urgently. Promise me you'll stay. That you won't run. I promise. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she told it anyway because he needed to leave and she needed him to go without worry. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing up her arm. I'll be back before nightfall, and then we're going to talk about everything, about your scars, about who hurt you, about our future together. Future. Another impossible word. Taylor released her hand reluctantly and turned to Alpha Winston. While I'm gone, Lynette is under my personal protection. If anyone, and I mean anyone, touches her, speaks to her with disrespect, or causes her even a moment of discomfort, I will consider it a personal attack on my mate, and respond accordingly. Am I clear? Crystal clear, Your Majesty. Alpha Winston's smile didn't reach his eyes. Good. Taylor's gaze swept the room, landing on each person present with the weight of a physical threat. I'll know if something happens to her. The bond tells me when she's in distress. Remember that. Then, with one last lingering look at Lynette, a look full of promise and possession, and something that might have been love if she was foolish enough to hope, he strode from the room, taking half his warriors with him. The silence that followed his departure was deafening. Lynette stood frozen in the center of the dining hall, wearing the Alpha King's jacket and feeling like she'd just stepped into a nightmare disguised as a dream. Alpha Winston was the first to speak. Everyone out. Now. I need to speak with Lynette. Alone. The room cleared in seconds, wolves practically tripping over themselves to escape. Even Cassandra left, though not before shooting Lynette a look that promised violence and retribution. When the doors closed, leaving just Lynette and her father in the cavernous hall, Alpha Winston's diplomatic mask dissolved. You manipulative little bitch. The words were spoken conversationally, almost casually, which made them even more terrifying. I didn't. Lynette started. Shut your mouth. He crossed the space between them in 3 long strides. I don't know how you did it. Some pathetic Omega trick your mother taught you. Some way to fool a king into thinking the bond is real when you don't even have a wolf to feel it with. It wasn't a trick. I didn't know. His hand cracked across her face before she could finish the sentence. The force of it sent her stumbling backward, Taylor's jacket slipping from her shoulders. 18 years. Alpha Winston hissed. 18 years I've supported you and that Omega whore who birthed you. Given you food, shelter, a place in my pack house. And this is how you repay me? By seducing the Alpha King? By trying to steal a position that belongs to your sister? Lynette's cheek throbbed where he'd struck her, but she'd learned long ago not to cry. Tears only made it worse. I didn't seduce anyone. He recognized the mate bond, not me. I didn't even know it was possible. Of course it's not possible. Spittle flew from his mouth as his voice rose. You're wolfless. The moon goddess wouldn't waste an Alpha King on defective goods, which means either you're lying, or he's delusional, or Dodd. He paused and something calculating entered his eyes. Or you're going to reject him. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? You're going to reject the mate bond. Alpha Winston smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Lynette had ever seen. You're going to tell the Alpha King that you don't want him, that you're not worthy, that he deserves better, someone like Cassandra, perhaps. I can't. You can and you will. He leaned in close, his breath hot on her face. Because if you don't, I'll invoke my rights as your father, and have you executed for treason. I'll claim you used dark magic to manipulate the king, that you're a threat to the throne. And before you die, I'll make sure your mother is sent to the breeding facility, the one on the northern border, where the wolves are particularly rough. Lynette's blood turned to ice. You wouldn't. Try me. His smile widened. Reject him. Or watch everyone you love suffer. Your choice. Chapter 4. Between Love and Survival. Lynette sat alone in the kitchen for hours after her father left, his ultimatum echoing in her mind like a death sentence. Reject him, or watch everyone you love suffer. Her cheek still throbbed where he'd struck her a familiar pain, almost comforting in its predictability. She'd covered the mark with powder from her mother's modest cosmetics bag, layered it until the bruise was barely visible, another skill she'd perfected over the years. How to hide, how to lie, how to pretend everything was fine when your world was ending. The burned arm was worse. The coffee had soaked through to skin that was already scarred, creating fresh damage over old wounds. She'd treated it herself with the medical supplies kept in the kitchen, bandaged it carefully, swallowed pain medication that barely touched the agony, and pulled her sleeve back down to hide the evidence. Always hiding, always covering, always pretending to be less than she was so that others could feel like more. Lynn? Her mother's voice was soft as she entered the kitchen. Sarah's eyes immediately went to her daughter's face, and even through the powder, a mother's gaze saw everything. Oh baby, what did he do? It doesn't matter. Lynette kept her voice steady, her hands busy chopping vegetables for the evening meal. Routine. Normalcy. The illusion of control. Mama, we need to talk about what happens next. What happens next is you become queen. Sarah's voice held a fierce pride that made Lynette's heart crack. My daughter, mated to the Alpha King. The moon goddess has finally. I'm going to reject him. The knife Sarah had been holding clattered to the floor. What? The word came out strangled. Lynn, you can't. The mate bond is sacred. It's a gift from the moon goddess herself. To reject it would be the only way to keep you safe. Lynette finally looked up, meeting her mother's horrified gaze. Father came to me after the king left. He gave me a choice: reject the bond, or he'll have us both killed. You sent to the breeding facility, me executed for treason. Sarah's face went deathly pale. He wouldn't dare. Not with the Alpha King's protection, wouldn't he? Lynette set down her own knife before her trembling hands could become dangerous. Think about it, Mama. An Alpha King shows up claiming a wolfless girl as his mate? People will already be suspicious. All Father has to do is plant seeds of doubt. Suggest I use dark magic. Claim I manipulated the king somehow. And who would believe my word against his? Taylor would believe you. The sound of his name sent that dangerous warmth through her chest again, the bond pulling at her, urging her to go to him, to wait for his return, to believe in the impossible future he promised. But Lynette had learned long ago that hope was more dangerous than any blade. Maybe he would, she said softly. But can I risk your life on a maybe? Can I risk that Father won't find a way to hurt you before Taylor can stop him? Sarah crossed to her daughter, cupping her face with gentle hands that had soothed so many wounds over the years. Baby, listen to me. Your father is a coward and a bully, but he's not stupid. If you reject the Alpha King, Taylor will want to know why. He'll investigate, and when he discovers the truth, and he will, because Alpha Kings don't get to their position by being easy to fool, your father's life will be forfeit. Then at least you'll be alive to see it. At the cost of your happiness? Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. At the cost of the one good thing the moon goddess has ever given you? Lynn, I won't let you sacrifice your mate for me, and I won't let him sacrifice you for his pride. The words burst out louder than Lynette intended. She took a shaking breath, forcing her voice back to a whisper. Mama, I don't know how to be a queen. I don't know how to be anything except what I am. A wolfless kitchen girl who's good at being invisible. But I know how to protect you. I know how to survive. And if surviving means rejecting a mate bond that shouldn't exist in the first place, it should exist. Sarah's voice turned fierce. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. If she gave you to Taylor Burke, it's because you're exactly who he needs, who he deserves. I'm nobody. The truth fell from Lynette's lips like stones. I'm scarred and broken and wolfless. What kind of queen would I make? What kind of Luna? I can't even shift. Mama, I can't protect a pack or lead warriors or, you've been protecting me since you were 8 years old. Sarah's grip on her face tightened. You've survived 18 years of abuse that would have broken most wolves. You've stayed kind when the world gave you every reason to turn cruel. You've kept hope alive in a heart that had every right to give up. Don't you dare tell me you're nobody. Lynette wanted to believe her. Goddess. She wanted to believe that she could be someone worthy of an Alpha King's devotion. But every scar on her body told a different story. Every memory of being called worthless, useless, nothing weighed against her mother's words. I have until he returns, she said finally. That's what Father gave me. When Taylor comes back from the border, I have to give him my answer. Then tell him the truth. Sarah's voice broke. Tell him what your father threatened. Let him help you, baby. That's what mates do, they help each other. But Lynette had learned another lesson over her 18 years. Asking for help only gave people power over you. And she'd had enough of being powerless. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lynette moved through her tasks mechanically, preparing food, cleaning dishes, avoiding eye contact with every pack member who suddenly found reasons to walk past the kitchen and stare at the wolfless girl who'd somehow ensnared their king. Cassandra appeared 3 times. Each visit was brief, pointed, and laden with threats that stayed just shy of explicit. Interesting jacket you were wearing earlier, she'd said the first time, her voice dripping honey and poison. I'm sure the king will want it back. Once he realizes his mistake. The second time. Father's having your room cleared out. The queen's suite is being prepared. Though I'm sure it won't be occupied long. The third time, she'd simply smiled, expression so cold it could freeze fire, and walked away without saying a word. That final visit was somehow the most terrifying. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Lynette found herself drawn to the kitchen window that overlooked the forest. Somewhere beyond those trees, Taylor was fighting rogues, protecting his pack, doing the job of an alpha king while she cowered in a kitchen, trying to figure out how to break both their hearts. She pressed her hand against the glass, imagining she could feel him through the bond. Was he hurt? Was he thinking of her? Did he suspect that the moment he returned she was going to shatter the one thing the moon goddess had given them both? Penny for your thoughts? Lynette spun to find a man standing in the kitchen doorway, one of Taylor's warriors who'd arrived with him that morning. He was shorter than the king but no less intimidating, with scars crossing his face and eyes that had seen too much violence. Beta Willian, she said, recognizing him from the breakfast debacle. Her hands automatically went to her sleeves, making sure they covered everything. Can I help you with something? Actually, I'm here to help you. He stepped fully into the kitchen, his movements careful, non-threatening. The king asked me to check on you before we left for the border. Make sure you're settling into your new role. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. But he said it kindly, without judgment. Look, I'm not going to pretend I understand what's happening between you and Taylor. A wolfless maid is unprecedented, but I've known him for 10 years, served under him for 8, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you this morning. The warmth in her chest flickered, threatened to become something bigger. You don't know me. Maybe I'm not worth looking at that way. Maybe that's not for you to decide. William leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed despite the intensity of his gaze. The king is a good man, Lynette. Better than most alphas. He doesn't abuse his power, doesn't take what isn't offered, and he sure as hell doesn't claim false mate bonds. How can it be real when I don't have a wolf? How can the sun rise every morning? How does the moon control the tides? Some things just are, whether we understand them or not. He paused, studying her face. He's going to want answers when he gets back. About your scars. About who hurt you. About why you look like a deer caught in headlights every time someone mentions your future as queen. Lynette's throat tightened. What if I don't have good answers? Then tell him the truth anyway. Bad answers are better than lies. William pushed off the counter, preparing to leave. One more thing, I'm posting guards outside the kitchen. King's orders. He wants to make sure you're safe while he's gone. That's not necessary. It's not negotiable. But again, he said it kindly. You're the king's mate, which makes you the most important person in this pack house. Possibly the most important person in the kingdom. People are going to adjust to that reality at different speeds. Some might try to encourage you to leave, to reject the bond, to disappear. He knew. Somehow, this warrior she'd met only hours ago knew exactly what she was facing. If anyone threatens you, William continued, if anyone hurts you, or tries to manipulate you into doing something you don't want to do, you tell me. Or you tell the king when he returns. But you don't face it alone, understand? Lynette nodded, not trusting her voice. After he left, she sank into a chair and let her head fall into her hands. The guards outside were both a protection and a prison. She couldn't run even if she wanted to. Couldn't hide, couldn't do anything except wait for Taylor to return and make the choice that would destroy them both. Reject him, or watch everyone you love suffer. Her father's words played on repeat in her mind, an endless loop of impossible choices. The sun continued its descent, painting the kitchen in shades of amber and gold that reminded her of Taylor's eyes. Of the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious, instead of something broken. Night was falling, and with it came the moment when Lynette would have to choose between her mate and her mother. Between the future she wanted and the present she could survive. Between love and sacrifice. The bond pulled at her heart, singing its golden song of connection and completion. But all Lynette could hear was the sound of her own breaking. Chapter 5, The King's Return. Taylor Burke returned with the moon. Lynette felt him before she saw him, a pull in her chest that went from gentle warmth to blazing heat the moment he crossed back into packed territory. The bond sang with relief, with recognition, with a joy so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She blinked them away angrily. She couldn't afford to feel this. Couldn't afford to want what she was about to destroy. The kitchen had long since emptied, the evening meal served and cleared. Only Lynette remained, sitting at the small wooden table where the staff took their breaks, staring at her bandaged arm, and rehearsing the words that would break both their hearts. I can't be your mate. I'm not strong enough. You deserve better. Please, just let me go. Simple. Clean. A rejection that would sever the bond and save her mother's life. She just had to say the words before her courage failed. The kitchen door swung open, with enough force to bang against the wall. Taylor stood in the doorway, backlit by the corridor lights, and even from across the room Lynette could see he was covered in blood. Her rehearsed words died in her throat. Are you hurt? Not my blood. He crossed the space between them in long strides, his eyes scanning her face with an intensity that made her feel transparent. The rogues are dealt with. We lost 2 warriors, but it could have been worse. How are you? Did anyone? His eyes landed on her cheek, and even through the powder she'd applied, he saw. Who touched you? No one. I'm fine. Lynette. Her name was a warning and a plea wrapped together. Don't lie to me. Someone hit you. I can see the bruise under the makeup. Who? Touched. You. The command in his voice made every instinct scream at her to submit, to answer, to obey. But she'd spent 18 years learning how to resist commands from alphas who thought they owned her. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Taylor reached for her face. But she flinched back before she could stop herself. The movement was instinctive, ingrained, and the look that crossed his face made her wish she could take it back. He looked devastated. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean. Don't apologize for being afraid. His voice had gone soft, careful. But please, little one, let me see. Let me make sure you're okay. The endearment undid something in her chest. Little one, like she was something to be cherished instead of tolerated. Against her better judgment, she let him cup her face, let his thumb trace gently over the bruise her father had left. Alpha Winston, Taylor said flatly. It wasn't a question. Lynette's silence was answer enough. He hit you. Something dangerous flickered in Taylor's eyes, his wolf rising, demanding blood. He hit his own daughter. My mate. After I explicitly. He took a breath, visibly fighting for control. What else did he do? Nothing. He just wanted to talk about. This was it. The moment where she had to choose. Lynette looked into Taylor's amber eyes. Eyes that had seen her scars and hadn't flinched. That had looked at her like she was beautiful instead of broken and felt the words she'd rehearsed crumble to ash. She couldn't do it. Goddess help her. She couldn't reject him. He wants me to reject you, she said finally, the truth spilling out before she could stop it. He said if I don't, he'll have me executed for treason. He'll claim I used dark magic to manipulate you. And before I die, he'll send my mother to the breeding facility on the northern border. The temperature in the kitchen seemed to drop 20 degrees. Taylor went utterly still, the kind of stillness that came before an explosion. He threatened to kill you. Yes. And to send your mother and Omega under pack protection to a breeding facility. Yes. Because you're my mate. Because I'm wolfless and worthless, and not good enough to be queen. The words tumbled out faster now, all her fears and insecurities bleeding through. He's right, Taylor. Look at me. I can't shift. I can't fight. I don't know anything about ruling or politics or… Stop. His hands moved from her face to her shoulders, his grip firm but gentle. Stop tearing yourself down. I don't care what Winston told you. I don't care what lies he fed you about your worth. You're my mate. Mine. And anyone who threatens you threatens me. But… no buts. His eyes blazed with a fury that should have terrified her but somehow didn't. When I touched you this morning, when I looked into your eyes, I felt the bond snap into place. Do you understand what that means? I've waited 28 years to find my mate. 28 years of watching other alphas find their perfect matches while I wondered if the moon goddess had forgotten about me. And then I walked into that dining hall and saw you broken and scared and trying so hard to be invisible, and my wolf went insane. He pulled her closer until she could feel the heat radiating off him, could smell cedar and night air and the copper tang of blood from the battle he'd just fought. You think I care that you're wolfless? His voice had gone rough with emotion. You think that matters compared to the fact that you're mine? That the moon goddess chose you specifically for me? I don't understand why, Lynette whispered. Why me? Why someone who can't give you everything a mate should? Because you already are everything I need. He rested his forehead against hers, the gesture achingly intimate. I've spent 10 years ruling with strength and fear and violence. Do you know what that does to a person? What it costs to be the warrior king everyone needs? I'm tired, Lynette. Tired of being hard. Tired of being cruel. And then I found you someone who's survived worse than I ever have, and stayed kind. Someone who protected a coffee carafe while burning herself because she didn't want to cause trouble. Someone who keeps her mother's secrets, and bears her father's abuse, and still manages to look at the world with hope in her eyes. Tears were streaming down Lynette's face now, and she couldn't stop them. I'm not hopeful. I'm scared all the time. Being scared and being hopeful aren't mutually exclusive. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. And you don't have to be scared anymore. Not of Winston, not of anyone. I meant what I said this morning. You're under my protection now. Mine to guard. Mine to keep safe. Mine to cherish. The word hung between them, heavy with promise. What are you going to do? Lynette asked. About my father? What I should have done the moment I saw your scars. Taylor's expression hardened. I'm going to have him arrested for child abuse, assault on the king's mate, and threatening a member of the royal family. He'll stand trial before the High Council. And if they find him guilty, which they will, he'll be stripped of his alpha position and exiled from the kingdom. Cassandra will be fine. She's not responsible for her father's crimes. He paused. Unless she was involved in hurting you too? Lynette hesitated. The truth was complicated. Cassandra had never hit her directly, but her friends had. She'd stood by and watched, encouraged it, laughed at it. Did that make her guilty? She never stopped it, Lynette said finally. When others hurt me, she watched. Sometimes she told them where to find me. Taylor's jaw clenched. Then she'll answer for that too. Complicity is still guilt. The pack won't like it. You arresting their alpha, punishing his daughter. The pack will adjust. His voice turned cold, commanding. I'm the Alpha King. My word is law. And my law says that anyone who harms my mate will face consequences. If the Crescent Moon Pack has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly. Despite everything, the fear, the pain, the impossibility of their situation, Lynette felt something unfurl in her chest. Something that might have been safety, or trust, or the beginning of love. My mother, she said softly. I need to know she's protected too. Already done. Taylor's expression softened. I had William assign guards to her before I left for the border. She's safe, Lynette. I promise. You barely know us. Why would you? Because she's your mother. Because she protected you when no one else would. Because anyone important to you is important to me. He cupped her face again, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. That's what mates do, little one. We protect each other. We protect what each other loves. Lynette closed her eyes, letting herself feel the bond fully for the first time. It pulsed between them like a living thing, warm and golden and impossibly right. Even without a wolf, she could feel him in her soul, could feel his determination, his fury on her behalf, his absolute certainty that they belonged together. "I've never had anyone fight for me before," she admitted. "Get used to it." There was a smile in his voice now. "I plan on fighting for you every day for the rest of our lives." "That's a long time." "Not long enough." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste, gentle, and somehow more intimate than anything she'd ever experienced. "Come on. Let me get you out of this kitchen. You shouldn't be working anymore anyway. You're the king's mate, not the help. I don't know how to be anything else." "Then I'll teach you." He pulled back, offering his hand. "Starting now. No more sleeping in servants' quarters. No more hiding in kitchens. You're moving into the queen's suite tonight." Panic flared. "That's too fast. People will talk." "People are already talking. Let them." His hand remained extended, steady and sure. "Trust me, Lynette. Take my hand. Take the first step toward the life you deserve." She looked at his hand, large and scarred from years of battle, yet gentle when it touched her, looked at his face, handsome and fierce, and looking at her like she was something precious. Then she looked at the kitchen around her. The place where she'd spent most of her life being invisible, being nothing, being whatever others needed her to be, and she made her choice. Lynette placed her hand in Taylor's. "Okay," she whispered. "Teach me." The smile that broke across his face was like watching the sun rise. "With pleasure, my queen." And for the first time in her life, Lynette let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than the scars on her skin. She could be loved. Chapter 6. The Queen's Suite. The Queen's Suite was located in the eastern wing of the pack house, a section Lynette had only ever entered to clean, and even then, only when every other servant was busy. Walking through those corridors now, with Taylor's hand warm around hers and two of his personal guards trailing behind them, felt surreal. Pack members stopped and stared as they passed. Some dropped their heads in respect, others whispered behind their hands, their expressions ranging from shock to outright hostility. Lynette kept her eyes down, falling back into old habits. "Hey." Taylor's voice was soft, meant only for her. "Head up, little one. You have nothing to be ashamed of. They're staring. Let them stare. They need to get used to seeing you beside me." He squeezed her hand gently. "And you need to get used to being seen." The words hit deeper than he probably intended. Being seen. For 18 years, Lynette had perfected the art of being invisible, moving through spaces without leaving an impression, existing without taking up room, surviving by making herself small enough that people forgot she was there. But Taylor didn't want her small. He wanted her seen. The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. They stopped in front of an ornate door carved with images of wolves running beneath a full moon. Taylor produced a key, but before he could unlock it, a voice cut through the corridor. "Your Majesty." They turned to find Alpha Winston striding toward them, Cassandra at his heels. Her father's face was carefully neutral, but Lynette could see the fury simmering beneath his diplomatic mask. "Winston." Taylor's voice went cold, formal. "Cassandra, I heard you returned from the border." Winston's eyes flicked to Lynette, then away, as if looking at her too long might contaminate him. "I wanted to ensure everything was to your satisfaction. The accommodations, the hospitality." "We need to talk," Taylor interrupted. "But not here, not now. My mate is exhausted, and I need to attend to her needs before we discuss pack business." Of course. Winston's smile was strained. "Though I hope you'll allow me to clarify any misunderstandings that may have occurred during your absence." Misunderstandings. Taylor's grip on Lynette's hand tightened protectively. "Is that what we're calling threats against my mate now?" The temperature in the corridor dropped. Cassandra's eyes widened, and Winston's face went carefully blank. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Your Majesty." "Don't you?" Taylor took a step forward, and even though Winston was an alpha himself, he instinctively retreated. "Because Lynette told me about your conversation earlier, about how you struck her, about the ultimatum you gave her, about your threats regarding her mother. She's lying." Winston's voice turned sharp. "Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but you must understand this girl has always been troubled, prone to exaggeration, to seeking attention. Are you calling my maid a liar? The words came out soft, deadly. Winston paled. I'm simply suggesting that perhaps emotions are running high, and in the confusion, the only confusion here, is how you thought threatening my mate was a good idea. Taylor's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising. Tomorrow morning, you will appear before me in the pack's formal meeting hall. You will answer for your crimes, and you will do so honestly, or I will drag the truth out of you myself. Are we clear? Sure. It wasn't a question. It was a command backed by the full weight of the Alpha King's authority. Winston's jaw clenched. Crystal clear. Your Majesty. Good. Now get out of my sight before I forget that I'm supposed to be civilized. Winston turned to leave, but Cassandra remained, her eyes fixed on Lynette with an expression that promised violence. Is there something you wanted to say, Cassandra? Taylor asked, his voice deceptively mild. Just wondering how it feels, Cassandra said, still staring at Lynette. To steal something that was never meant for you. Cassandra. Winston's voice cracked like a whip, but his daughter ignored him. You were always jealous of me, weren't you? Always wanting what I had, and now you've manipulated the king into believing you're his mate, also you can. That's enough. Taylor's command rippled through the corridor with physical force, and Cassandra's words cut off mid-sentence. You will not speak to your queen that way. You will not speak about your queen that way. And if I hear you've been spreading lies or rumors designed to undermine her position, you'll find yourself answering to me as well. Do I make myself clear? Cassandra's face had gone white with rage, but she managed a stiff nod. I asked you a question, Cassandra. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Majesty. The words came out strangled. Then I suggest you follow your father. Before I decide that complicity in abuse deserves immediate punishment rather than a formal trial. This time, Cassandra fled, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Winston followed, shooting one last venomous look at Lynette, before disappearing around the corner. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. I'm sorry, Lynette whispered. I didn't mean to cause trouble between you and the pack. Stop. Taylor turned to her, his expression fierce. You didn't cause anything. They did. With their cruelty, their abuse, their complete failure to protect someone who should have been treasured, he cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. And I will burn this entire pack to the ground before I let them hurt you again. Understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, then finally unlocked the door to the Queen's suite. Now, let's get you somewhere safe. The Queen's suite was more beautiful than anything Lynette had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the forest, allowing moonlight to spill across hardwood floors polished to a mirror shine. The furniture was elegant without being ostentatious, a large bed with silk sheets, plush chairs arranged near a fireplace, bookcases filled with leather-bound volumes. Doorways led to what she assumed were a bathroom and closet, both likely larger than the servants' room she'd shared with her mother for 18 years. It's too much, she said softly. It's yours. Taylor guided her inside, dismissing the guards with a gesture. They took up positions outside the door, giving them privacy but remaining close enough to respond to threats. Everything in this room, everything in this wing, it all belongs to the Queen, which means it belongs to you. Lynette walked to the window, pressing her hand against the cool glass. From here, she could see the forest stretching toward the horizon, could see the moon hanging heavy and full in the sky. I don't know how to be a queen. I didn't know how to be a king either. Taylor came up behind her, close but not touching, giving her space to breathe. I was 25 when my father died, 25 and angry and so consumed with grief and rage that I nearly destroyed everything he'd built. But I learned. And you will too. What if I can't? What if I fail? Then you fail, and we figure it out together. He did touch her then, his hands settling on her shoulders, warm and steady. Being a queen isn't about being perfect, Lynette. It's about caring for your people, about using whatever power you have to protect those who can't protect themselves. And you've been doing that your entire life, protecting your mother, protecting yourself, surviving against impossible odds. You're already more qualified than half the alphas I know. She wanted to believe him, wanted to accept that she could be something more than what 18 years of abuse had taught her she was. My arm, she said suddenly, changing the subject before the emotions overwhelmed her. I need to change the bandage. The burn from this morning. Let me see. It's fine. Lynette. There was that gentle command again, the one that made her want to obey not out of fear, but out of trust. Please, let me take care of you. Slowly, she rolled up her sleeve, revealing the bandage she'd applied hours ago. It was already soaked through with fluid from the burn, the edges stained pink. Taylor's expression went dark. This needs proper medical attention. Why didn't you go to the pack doctor? Because the pack doctor would have told my father. And then I would have been punished for causing a scene. The words came out flat. Matter of fact. This was her reality. This was normal. That's not normal, Taylor said, reading her thoughts in her tone. That's abuse. And it ends now. He guided her to sit on the bed, then disappeared into the bathroom, returning with a first aid kit that was far more comprehensive than the basic supplies she'd used in the kitchen. How bad is it? She asked as he carefully unwound the bandage. Bad enough that you should have gotten help immediately. His touch was impossibly gentle as he examined the burn red and blistered, covering most of her forearm. This is going to scar. I'm already covered in scars. What's one more? He looked up at her then, and the pain in his eyes made her breath catch. Every scar on your body is a failure. My failure, your pack's failure, the moon goddess's failure. We should have protected you, should have found you sooner, should have, his voice broke. Taylor, I keep thinking about all the years you suffered while I was living in comfort, all the times you were hurt while I was safe, all the moments you needed someone and had no one. He applied salve to the burn with steady hands despite the emotion in his voice. How do I make that right? How do I give you back the childhood you lost? You can't. Lynette reached out with her good hand, touching his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw. But you can give me a future. You can help me believe that the rest of my life doesn't have to look like the first 18 years. He turned his face into her palm, pressing a kiss there that felt like a promise. I can do that. I will do that. He finished bandaging her arm with professional efficiency, then sat back. But right now, what you need is sleep. Real sleep, in a real bed, somewhere safe. Where will you sleep? There's a couch in the sitting room. I'll be comfortable. Stay. The word escaped before she could stop it. Please. I don't want to be alone. Something shifted in his expression, softness mixed with fierce protectiveness. Are you sure? I don't want to push you into anything. You're not pushing. I'm asking. She met his eyes, finding courage in the bond that hummed between them. Just hold me. While I sleep, I would be honored. My queen. They prepared for bed in careful silence. Taylor removed his boots and blood-stained shirt, revealing a chest crisscrossed with scars of his own, proof that even alpha kings weren't immune to violence. Lynette changed into a nightgown that had been left in the closet, silk and lace, and far too beautiful for someone like her. When they finally lay down together, Taylor pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from the entire world. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what? For seeing me. For wanting me. For making me believe I might be worth something. His arms tightened. You're worth everything, little one. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. Lynette closed her eyes, letting the bond wrap around her like a blanket, letting herself feel safe for the first time in 18 years. And in the arms of her alpha king, she finally slept without fear. Chapter 7, The Trial of an Alpha. Lynette woke to sunlight streaming through windows that weren't hers, and arms that shouldn't have felt so right wrapped around her body. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, cataloging the unfamiliar sensations. The silk sheets against her skin, the scent of cedar and night air that surrounded her, the steady rise and fall of the chest beneath her cheek, the warmth of safety she'd never known existed. Then reality crashed back, and with it came the memory of what today would bring. The trial. You're thinking too loud. Taylor's voice rumbled beneath her ear, rough with sleep. I can feel your anxiety through the bond. Sorry. She started to pull away, old instincts demanding she make herself smaller, but his arms tightened gently, keeping her close. Don't apologize for feeling things. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Talk to me. What's wrong? Today you're putting my father on trial. Yes. The pack will hate me for it. The pack will adjust. His hand traced lazy circles on her back, soothing. And anyone who has a problem with justice being served can take it up with me. Lynette tilted her head to look up at him. In the morning light, Taylor looked younger. Somehow less like the terrifying Alpha King, and more like a man who'd found something precious and was determined to protect it. What if they're right? She whispered. What if I'm not worth all this trouble? Then they're idiots. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. But they're not right. You're worth everything, Lynette, and it's time this pack learned that. 2 hours later, Lynette stood in the pack's formal meeting hall wearing a dress that Taylor's people had provided deep blue silk that covered her scars but somehow made her feel exposed anyway. Her hair had been brushed until it shone, pulled back in a style that was too elegant for someone who usually hid behind tangled strands. Her burned arm throbbed beneath fresh bandages, a constant reminder of yesterday's confrontation. She looked like someone playing dress-up in a queen's clothing. "Stop fidgeting," Taylor murmured beside her. He sat in the Alpha King's chair, a massive throne carved from dark wood and decorated with wolves. She sat to his right in a chair that was slightly smaller but no less ornate. The Queen's chair. "You look beautiful. I look like a fraud. You look like exactly what you are, my mate, my queen, and the strongest person in this room." His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together in full view of the assembled pack. "I've got you. No matter what happens, I've got you." The meeting hall was packed. Every pack member who could fit had crowded inside, and those who couldn't pressed against the windows, craning for a view. Lynette could feel their eyes on her, some curious, some hostile, all judging. At the far end of the hall, flanked by 2 of Taylor's warriors, stood Alpha Winston. He dressed formally in a suit that probably cost more than her mother made in a year. His expression was carefully neutral, but Lynette could see the rage simmering beneath. Beside him stood Cassandra, her beautiful face twisted with barely contained fury, and in the crowd, pressed against the wall near the back, was her mother. Sarah's eyes were red-rimmed but fierce, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. When their gazes met, Sarah nodded a tiny gesture that somehow conveyed 18 years of love and support and silent apologies for not being able to protect her daughter from this moment. Taylor stood, and the hall fell silent. "We are here," he began, his voice carrying easily through the space, "to address charges brought against Alpha Winston of the Crescent Moon Pack. The charges are as follows: assault on the Alpha King's mate, child abuse spanning 18 years, threatening a member of the royal family, and conspiracy to force a rejection of a sacred mate bond." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone in the back called out, "That's impossible. Alpha Winston would never." Silence. Taylor's command cracked through the hall like thunder. "You will have your chance to speak. But first, we will hear testimony." He turned to Winston. "Alpha Winston, you stand accused of striking Lynette Riggs, your own daughter, and my mate yesterday afternoon. How do you plead?" Winston's jaw clenched. "Not guilty, Your Majesty." "I would never." "Remove the powder from her face," Taylor ordered, his eyes never leaving Winston. "Show them what you did." Lynette's hands trembled as she raised them to her cheek, wiping away the makeup she'd carefully applied that morning. The bruise underneath was dark purple, roughly the size and shape of a hand. Winston's hand. More gasps, more whispers. She could hear her pack members turning on each other, arguing in hushed tones about what this meant, whether it was possible their Alpha had done this. "That could be from anything," Cassandra's voice rang out. "She's always been clumsy, always hurting herself." "Interesting defense," Taylor interrupted. "Let's test it. Lynette, remove your sleeves." Her heart stopped. "Taylor, trust me." His voice softened, meant only for her. "Show them. Show them what 18 years of clumsiness looks like." This was it. The moment where everyone would see exactly how broken she was, how damaged, how unworthy of being queen. But Taylor was looking at her with such absolute faith, such complete certainty that she was strong enough for this, that she found herself standing, found herself reaching for the buttons of her dress with shaking hands. The fabric fell away, revealing her arms, both of them, from shoulder to wrist, the roadmap of scars she'd spent 18 years hiding. Burn marks, claw wounds, cuts that had healed crooked because no one had bothered to stitch them properly, bruises in various stages of healing, yellowing at the edges, And across her shoulders, barely visible above the neckline of her dress, the raised edges of whip marks. The hall went deathly silent. "These are not accidents," Taylor said, his voice vibrating with barely contained rage. "These are not the result of clumsiness. These are 18 years of systematic abuse inflicted on a child who couldn't defend herself. A child who was denied pack protection because she was born wolfless. A child who was beaten and burned and cut and told she was worthless while her own father stood by and allowed it to happen. She's lying." Winston's voice cracked. "Your Majesty, you must understand she's always been troubled, always seeking attention." "Then explain the scars that are years old," Taylor countered. "Explain the ones that have healed over and over in the same places, suggesting repeated trauma. Explain." His voice broke, and when he continued it was rawer than Lynette had ever heard it. "Explain how a father watches his child suffer like this and does nothing." Winston's face had gone red. "She's not truly my child. She's wolfless, an aberration. The product of a moment of weakness with an Omega who—" "Careful." The word was spoken softly, but it cut through Winston's tirade like a blade. "You're talking about my mate's mother, and I'm not feeling particularly merciful today. I want to hear from Sarah Riggs," Taylor continued. "Lynette's mother. The Omega who witnessed this abuse and tried to protect her daughter with the limited power she had." His eyes found Sarah in the crowd. "Sarah, please come forward." Her mother moved through the packed hall like she was walking through water. When she reached the front, she dropped into a deep curtsy before Taylor, but he gestured for her to rise. "Sarah, I need you to tell the truth today. All of it. And I need you to know that you are under my personal protection. No one will retaliate against you for speaking honestly. Do you understand?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, Your Majesty." "How long has Alpha Winston been abusing your daughter?" "Since she was 8 years old, Your Majesty. That's when it became clear she wouldn't develop a wolf." "That's when—" Sarah's voice broke. "That's when he stopped pretending she existed." "And the scars on her body? Where did they come from?" "Some from the kitchen. Legitimate accidents when she was forced to work too many hours, too young. But most—" Sarah's hands were shaking. "Most were from pack members who knew the Alpha wouldn't protect her. From her half-sister's friends who thought it was funny to test their claws on someone who couldn't heal properly. From the Alpha himself, when she did something to embarrass him." "Lies," Winston roared. "All lies. Your Majesty, this Omega is clearly coaching the girl. I'm not finished." Sarah's voice turned hard, and for the first time Lynette saw the strength her mother had always hidden beneath submission. "Yesterday, after you discovered the mate bond, Alpha Winston came to my daughter. He told her to reject you, threatened to have her killed and me sent to a breeding facility if she didn't comply. He hit her, and he told her she was worthless just like he's been telling her for 18 years. The hall erupted, pack members shouting over each other, some defending their Alpha, others finally seeing the truth they'd been willfully blind to for years. Taylor let the chaos continue for exactly 10 seconds, before his Alpha command rolled through the room. "Enough." Every voice cut off mid-sentence. "Alpha Winston." Taylor's voice was ice and fury wrapped together. "You have been accused by 2 witnesses, your own daughter and her mother. The evidence is written on Lynette's skin. What defense do you offer?" Winston's composure finally cracked. "Defense? You want a defense? Fine. She's wolfless. She's an embarrassment to this pack, to werewolf kind. I did what any Alpha would do. I tried to minimize the damage of having a defective child. And now you want to punish me for doing my duty?" "Your duty," Taylor repeated slowly, "was to protect every member of your pack, especially the most vulnerable, especially your own child." He stood, and the power radiating off him made even the strongest wolves in the room shrink back. "Instead, you abused her. You allowed others to abuse her. You threatened her life and her mother's safety to protect your own reputation. And you dare call yourself an Alpha? I am an Alpha." Winston's wolf flashed in his eyes. "I've ruled this pack for 20 years. You can't just— I can do whatever I want. I'm the Alpha King." Taylor's voice dropped to a deadly quiet. "And my judgment is this. Winston, you are hereby stripped of your Alpha position. You will be exiled from this kingdom." You have 48 hours to leave Crescent Moon territory. If you are found within our borders after that time, you will be executed. You can't. I can. I have. And if you're smart, you'll leave now before I change my mind and execute you anyway." Taylor's eyes swept the crowd. "As for the rest of you, anyone who participated in abusing Lynette, anyone who stood by and allowed it to happen, you have one chance to confess and beg for her mercy, because she is your queen now, and her forgiveness is the only thing standing between you and exile." The hall fell silent again. Then, slowly, wolves began to step forward. Pack members Lynette recognized some who'd tripped her in hallways, some who'd burned her food and blamed her, some who'd simply laughed while others hurt her. They came forward one by one, dropping to their knees before her, begging forgiveness from the wolfless girl they'd spent years tormenting. And Lynette, standing there in her blue silk dress with her scars on display, and her alpha king at her side, finally understood what Taylor had been trying to tell her. She wasn't worthless. She was queen. Chapter 8. The Weight of a Crown. The confessions lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of pack members kneeling before Lynette, voices breaking as they admitted to cruelties both small and devastating. Some cried, some kept their heads down, unable to meet her eyes. Some tried to justify their actions. "I didn't know you were the king's mate. I thought you were just a servant. Everyone else was doing it." As if ignorance or conformity absolved them of guilt. Lynette stood through all of it, her hand gripping Taylor's like a lifeline, and felt something inside her shift with each confession. The small, frightened girl who'd learned to make herself invisible was still there, would probably always be there, but beside her stood someone new. Someone who was learning that survival wasn't the same as living, that being seen wasn't always dangerous, that sometimes justice actually came for those who deserved it. When the last wolf finished their confession and retreated to the back of the hall, Taylor turned to her. "They've confessed their crimes. Now they await your judgment, my queen." The title still felt wrong in her mouth, too big for someone who'd spent 18 years being told she was nothing. But Lynette looked at the wolves kneeling before her, some genuinely remorseful, others simply afraid of the consequences, and realized this moment wasn't about her comfort. It was about setting a precedent. About showing this pack, and every other pack in the kingdom, that the wolfless girl they'd tormented was now the one with power over their fates. "Stand," she said, her voice quieter than Taylor's commanding tone but carrying weight nonetheless. They stood, uncertainty written across every face. "I grew up believing I deserved what happened to me," Lynette continued. "That being wolfless made me less than, that my pain didn't matter because I didn't matter. And every time one of you hurt me, every time you stood by and watched, you confirmed that belief." Her voice didn't shake, even though her hands did. "You taught me that strength was the only thing that mattered in this world. That without a wolf, without power, I was nothing." Some of the kneeling wolves had the grace to look ashamed. "But you were wrong." She felt Taylor's presence beside her, solid and unwavering. "The moon goddess gave me to an alpha king, not despite my lack of a wolf, but because of who I am without one. Because I learned compassion in a world that showed me none. Because I stayed kind when I had every reason to become cruel. Because surviving what you all put me through required more strength than shifting ever could." She paused, letting the words sink in. "So here's my judgment. Those of you who actively hurt me, who used claws and fire and fists, you'll serve 1 year working in service positions within the pack. Cleaning, cooking, hauling supplies. You'll learn what it feels like to be invisible, to be treated as less than. And at the end of that year, if you've shown genuine change, you'll be allowed to return to your previous positions." Gasps rippled through the crowd. It was a merciful sentence, far less than exile or execution. Those of you who stood by and watched, who laughed but didn't participate directly, you'll undergo mandatory education about pack law and the protection owed to all members, regardless of wolf status. You'll also publicly apologize, in writing, so that there's a record of what happened here, so that future generations know what this pack allowed. More whispers. Some relieved, others ashamed. And for those of you who genuinely didn't know, who never witnessed the abuse and are only learning about it now, you owe me nothing. But you owe it to yourselves to pay attention, to notice when pack members are suffering, to speak up when you see injustice, because silence is complicity, and complicity is guilt. The hall was utterly quiet now, every eye fixed on Lynette. My mother once told me that the moon goddess loves all her children equally, she said softly. I'm choosing to believe that's true. I'm choosing to believe that even those of you who hurt me can change, can grow, can become better than you were. Because if I don't believe in redemption, then I'm no better than the people who decided I was irredeemable the moment I didn't develop a wolf. She felt Taylor's hand tighten on hers, pride and love and awe flooding through their bond. But understand this. Lynette's voice turned hard. This is your only chance. If I hear of anyone abusing their power over those weaker than themselves, if I discover that this pack has learned nothing from what happened here today, there will be no mercy, no second chances. Is that clear? A chorus of "Yes, my queen" echoed through the hall. Taylor stepped forward. You heard your queen. Her judgment stands. Those assigned service duty will report to Beta Willian within the hour for assignments. Those assigned education will receive schedules by end of day. And those tasked with written apologies have 1 week to submit them. His eyes swept the crowd with lethal intensity. This trial is concluded. But know that I will be watching this pack closely. Very closely. Dismissed. The hall cleared slowly, wolves filing out with expressions ranging from relief to shame to barely concealed rage. Lynette watched them go, feeling simultaneously powerful and exhausted. When the last pack member left, her knees buckled. Taylor caught her immediately, sweeping her into his arms like she weighed nothing. I've got you, little one. You did perfectly. I sentenced them to service duty, she whispered against his chest. Not exile, not execution. Will that make me look weak? It makes you look merciful. Strong enough to show grace. He carried her toward the door, nodding to the guards who fell into step behind them. And more importantly, it makes you look like a queen who understands that justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about rehabilitation. What about Cassandra? Lynette had noticed her half-sister hadn't confessed, hadn't knelt, had simply stood beside their father with murder in her eyes. She was complicit. She encouraged others to hurt me. Cassandra is a special case. Taylor's voice went cold. She didn't just stand by, she orchestrated. She used her position as the alpha's daughter to make you a target. That's not something service duty will fix. What will you do to her? What would you like me to do to her? The question caught Lynette off guard. She thought about Cassandra, beautiful, powerful, beloved Cassandra, who'd had everything Lynette wanted, and still found joy in making her sister suffer. The easy answer would be exile, or stripping her of her position, or any number of punishments that would give Lynette the satisfaction of watching her tormentor fall. But Lynette had just stood in front of an entire pack and talked about redemption, about believing people could change. I want her to understand, Lynette said finally. I want her to genuinely comprehend what she did wrong, and why it was wrong. Not just fear the consequences, but actually get it. Taylor studied her face for a long moment. You're far kinder than I would be in your position. Maybe. Or maybe I just know that revenge doesn't actually make you feel better. It just makes you like the people who hurt you in the first place. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Definitely kinder than me. They returned to the Queen's suite to find Sarah waiting outside the door, wringing her hands anxiously. The moment she saw them, she rushed forward. Lynn, baby, I'm so sorry. Mama, no. Lynette struggled until Taylor set her down, then pulled her mother into a fierce embrace. You have nothing to apologize for. You protected me as much as you could. You kept me alive. I should have done more. Should have run away with you. Should have done what? Lynette pulled back to meet her mother's eyes. Fled with a newborn into territory where rogues would have killed us both. Challenged an alpha when you had no power, no position, no support. Mama, you did everything you could with what you had, and it was enough. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm okay. Sarah's face crumpled, 18 years of guilt and fear and helpless rage spilling out in tears. Lynette held her mother while she sobbed, stroking her hair the way Sarah had stroked hers through countless nights of pain. Taylor stood back, giving them space, but Lynette could feel his presence through the bond, a steady anchor of support. What happens now? Sarah asked when her tears finally slowed. With Winston exiled, With you as queen, where does that leave me? It leaves you exactly where you choose to be, Taylor said, speaking up for the first time. You're no longer bound to serve this pack. As the queen's mother, you have status, resources, protection. You can stay here, move to the capital with us, or go anywhere in the kingdom. The choice is yours. Sarah blinked at him, clearly struggling to process that she had choices at all. I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't working. I've been a maid for 20 years. Then keep working, if that's what makes you happy, Taylor said gently. But work because you want to, not because you have to. And know that you'll be paid fairly, treated with respect, and given the dignity you should have received from the beginning. I don't know how to thank you, Your Majesty. You can thank me by helping your daughter navigate all this. Taylor's eyes softened. She's going to need support. Someone who knows her, who loves her, who can remind her of who she is when the weight of being queen becomes too heavy. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. I can do that. I've been doing that for 18 years. And you did it well, Taylor smiled. She's remarkable, Sarah. You should be proud. I am. Sarah looked at Lynette with such fierce love it made Lynette's chest ache. I always have been. After Sarah left, promising to return later with dinner. Because mothering instincts didn't disappear just because your daughter became royalty. Lynette and Taylor finally had a moment alone. How are you really feeling? Taylor asked, pulling her down to sit beside him on the couch. And don't tell me you're fine. I can feel your exhaustion through the bond. Tired, Lynette admitted. Overwhelmed. Terrified that I made the wrong call with the sentencing. You didn't. How do you know? Because I watched those wolves today. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I watched the way they looked at you while you were speaking. Some were afraid. Yes. But most were awed. You stood there, covered in scars they'd given you, and offered them mercy they didn't deserve. That's the kind of queen people follow, not out of fear, but out of loyalty. I just want to be fair. You are fair. You're also compassionate, intelligent, and far stronger than you give yourself credit for. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Do you know what I felt through the bond while you were passing judgment? She shook her head. Pride. So much pride I thought my chest might burst with it. His eyes blazed with intensity. You are everything I never knew I needed, Lynette Riggs. Everything and more. The words unlocked something in her chest, something warm and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Taylor, I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other 2 days, but I can't help it. Every time you do something impossibly brave, while thinking you're being weak, every time you show mercy when you have every right to show cruelty, every time you look at me like, maybe, just maybe you might be falling too, I fall a little harder. Lynette's breath caught. Love. He was talking about love. The thing she'd given up hope of ever finding. The thing she'd convinced herself she didn't deserve. I don't know how to love someone, she whispered. Then we'll learn together. He rested his forehead against hers. No pressure, no expectations, just, let me keep falling, and maybe someday you'll meet me there. And sitting in the queen's suite, wrapped in the arms of an alpha king who saw past her scars to the person underneath, Lynette realized something profound. Maybe she was already falling. Maybe she'd been falling since the moment he dropped to his knees before her and called her mate. Maybe love wasn't something you earned. Maybe it was something you received. Chapter 9. Eve of the Crown. 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparations, politics, and transformation. Winston had left within the promised 48 hours, vanishing into exile with nothing but the clothes on his back and a lifetime of bitterness. Cassandra had been sentenced to 6 months of supervised community service and mandatory counseling after a private meeting with Taylor, where according to him she'd finally broken down and admitted her role in Lynette's suffering. Whether the remorse was genuine or performative remained to be seen, but she'd at least stopped glaring daggers every time their paths crossed. The Crescent Moon Pack had a new alpha, now a fair-minded wolf named William Dixon, Taylor's own beta, who'd agreed to split his time between the capital and the pack territory until things stabilized. Under his leadership, the pack was slowly transforming from a place of cruelty to something that might eventually resemble a real community. And Lynette was learning what it meant to be queen. Keep your shoulders back. The etiquette instructor, a stern woman named Miriam Lester, who'd been imported from the capital specifically to train. Lynette tapped her spine with a wooden rod. Queens don't slouch. Queens take up space. Lynette straightened automatically, fighting 18 years of muscle memory that screamed at her to make herself smaller. 3 weeks of lessons, and her body still didn't understand that visibility was no longer dangerous. Better. Miriam circled her like a predator evaluating prey. Now walk across the room. Remember, you're not trying to be invisible. You're commanding attention. It felt wrong. Every step that drew eyes instead of deflecting them. Every movement that announced her presence rather than hiding it. Went against everything she'd learned to survive. But Lynette forced herself to walk the length of the training room with her head high and her shoulders back, channeling the confidence she didn't feel until maybe, just maybe, it started to feel real. Adequate, Miriam said, which was apparently the highest praise she gave. You're improving. At this rate, you might actually survive the Luna ceremony without embarrassing yourself. The Luna ceremony, the formal ritual where Lynette would be officially recognized as Taylor's mate and crowned as queen before every alpha in the kingdom. It was scheduled for tomorrow night. And the thought of it made Lynette's stomach twist with anxiety. What if I mess up? She asked, not for the first time. Then you mess up. Miriam's expression softened slightly, a rare occurrence. But you won't. I've trained dozens of Lunas, and you're far from the worst. You're teachable, respectful, and genuinely want to do well. That's more than I can say for most of the spoiled alpha daughters who usually end up in these positions. I'm still wolfless. And the moon is still silver, and water is still wet. Miriam waved a dismissive hand. Your lack of a wolf is irrelevant to your ability to rule. If anything, it makes you more qualified. You understand what it's like to be vulnerable, to need protection, to exist outside the traditional power structures. That perspective is valuable. Lynette wanted to believe her. Wanted to accept that being wolfless didn't automatically disqualify her from being a good queen. But 3 weeks of training couldn't erase 18 years of being told she was defective. The king is waiting for you in the garden, Miriam said, checking an elegant watch. Your lesson is complete for today. Go, spend time with your mate. Tomorrow will come soon enough. Lynette found Taylor in the pack house's rear garden, surrounded by roses that had just begun to bloom. He was out of his formal alpha attire for once, wearing simple jeans and a shirt that stretched across his shoulders in ways that made her heart stutter. 3 weeks together, and he still took her breath away. There's my queen, he said, turning with a smile that made her feel like the most important person in the world. How was torture with Miriam? Educational. Lynette moved into his arms automatically, a habit they'd developed over the past weeks. His embrace had become her safe space, the one place where she could let her guard down completely. She says I'm adequate, which apparently means I won't embarrass you tomorrow. You could never embarrass me. Taylor pressed a kiss to the top of her head. But I'm glad the lessons are going well. I know they're not easy for you. Nothing about this is easy. She pulled back to meet his eyes. Taylor, what if the other alphas refuse to accept me? What if they challenge the mate bond, or claim I'm not qualified, or, then I'll remind them that I'm the alpha king and my word is law. His voice went hard, protective. And if that doesn't work, I'll challenge anyone who disrespects you to single combat and make an example of them. Despite her anxiety, Lynette smiled. You can't just fight everyone who disagrees with you. Watch me. But his expression softened. Lynette, I need you to understand something. Tomorrow, when we go through the Luna ceremony, every alpha in the kingdom will be watching. They'll be judging, evaluating, looking for weaknesses. And some of them, the ones who value tradition over everything else, will see your lack of a wolf as exactly that, a weakness. Her stomach clenched. That's not making me feel better. Let me finish. He cupped her face, forcing her to maintain eye contact. They'll see it as a weakness at first. But then they'll watch you take your vows. They'll see the way you carry yourself with dignity and grace and strength that has nothing to do with shifting. They'll hear you speak about your vision for the kingdom, about protecting the vulnerable and ensuring justice for all pack members regardless of status. And they'll realize what I realized the moment I met you. What's that? That the moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. That you're exactly the queen this kingdom needs, someone who understands suffering and chose compassion anyway. Someone who knows what it's like to be powerless and will use their power to protect those who can't protect themselves. His thumbs traced her cheekbones. You're going to be magnificent tomorrow, little one, and I'm going to be standing beside you, so proud I might actually burst. Lynette felt tears prick her eyes. How do you always know what to say? Because I know you, the real you, not the person 18 years of abuse taught you to be. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then finally her lips. Soft and sweet and full of promise. They'd kissed before over the past 3 weeks, but it still made her heart race, still made her feel like maybe she was worthy of being loved. I have something for you, Taylor said when they finally broke apart. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. For tomorrow. Lynette's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside lay a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a pendant shaped like a crescent moon. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with tiny diamonds embedded in the moon's curve that caught the light and sparkled like stars. It was my mother's, Taylor said softly. She wore it during her own Luna ceremony, and her mother before her. It's been passed down through generations of queens, and now it's yours. Taylor, I can't, this is too much. It's exactly enough. He took the necklace from the box and moved behind her, fastening it around her neck. The pendant settled just above her heart, warm from his hands. My mother would have loved you, you know. She was fierce and kind, and believed that true strength came from protecting those weaker than yourself. You remind me of her. Lynette touched the pendant, feeling the weight of generations of queens who'd worn it before her. Women who'd been strong and powerful and worthy. Women she was supposed to live up to. What if I can't fill her shoes? You're not filling her shoes. Taylor turned her to face him. You're making your own path. Writing your own story. And yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah, there will be days when you want to give up, but you won't be doing it alone. I'll be right there beside you, every step of the way. Promise? I promise. He sealed it with another kiss. This one deeper, more intense. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow, you become my Luna officially. My queen, my partner in ruling. But you've been all those things since the moment the bond snapped into place. The ceremony just makes it public. No pressure then, Lynette said wryly. None at all. He grinned. Just a couple hundred alphas. They're Lunas. Representatives from every major pack in the kingdom, and probably several reporters documenting every moment for posterity. Easy. You're not helping. I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to remind you that no matter what happens tomorrow, whether you trip during the processional or forget your vows, or accidentally set something on fire, I will still love you. The bond between us doesn't care about perfect ceremonies or flawless execution. It just cares that we're together. The words hit her like a physical blow. You love me? Taylor blinked, as if realizing what he'd just said. Yeah. I do. I told you 3 weeks ago. I was falling, and somewhere between then and now, I landed. He searched her face anxiously. Is that okay? I know it's fast. I know you might not be there yet. I love you too. Lynette blurted out, the words escaping before she could overthink them. I didn't realize it until just now, but I do. I love you. I love the way you fight for me. I love the way you see me, really see me, not just the scars or the trauma or the wolfless thing everyone else focuses on. I love the way you make me feel safe, and I love that you're patient with me while I figure out how to be someone worthy of you. You're already worthy. His voice had gone rough with emotion. But I love hearing you say it anyway. They stood in the garden as the sun set, wrapped in each other's arms, and Lynette let herself feel the full weight of the bond between them. It sang through her veins like liquid gold, warm and right and absolutely certain. Tomorrow she would stand before hundreds of powerful wolves and claim her place as queen. Tomorrow, she would face judgment and scrutiny, and probably more than a few challenges to her worthiness. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, she was just Lynette, standing in a garden with the man she loved, wearing his mother's necklace and feeling, for the first time in her life, like she belonged somewhere, like she was home. "Ready for tomorrow?" Taylor asked softly. Lynette thought about the ceremony, about the watching eyes and the weight of a crown, thought about 18 years of abuse that had taught her she was nothing, and 3 weeks of love that had shown her she was everything. "No," she admitted, "but I'll do it anyway. That's my queen." Taylor's smile was proud and fierce and full of love. "That's my brave, impossible, magnificent queen." And wrapped in his arms, with the moon rising above them and the bond singing between their souls, Lynette let herself believe it might actually be true. Chapter 10. Born to Rule. The day of the Luna ceremony dawned cold and clear, with a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Lynette woke alone in the Queen's suite. Taylor had been required to spend the night before the ceremony in separate quarters, some ancient tradition about the Alpha and his Luna approaching the ritual from different spaces. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying every possible disaster that could unfold today. What if she tripped during the processional? What if her voice shook during the vows? What if the other Alphas laughed at the idea of a wolfless queen? What if the moon goddess herself rejected the bond, declaring it invalid? "Stop spiraling," Sarah's voice cut through her anxiety. Her mother entered carrying a breakfast tray, her face already made up and her dress elegant. "I can practically hear your thoughts from down the hall." "I'm terrified, Mama." "I know." Sarah set down the tray and sat beside her daughter on the bed. "But you're also ready. You've trained for 3 weeks. You know the ceremony inside and out. You have a mate who loves you and a pack know. A kingdom that's about to discover what I've always known." "What's that?" "That my daughter is extraordinary." Sarah cupped Lynette's face. "Eat your breakfast. Then we'll get you ready to become queen." The transformation took hours. A team of attendants descended on Lynette like a benevolent storm, washing, styling, painting, and adorning until she barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her hair had been swept up in an intricate style woven with silver thread that caught the light. Her makeup was subtle but transformative, emphasizing her eyes and hiding the last traces of anxiety in her expression. And the dress. The Luna ceremony dress was a masterpiece of white silk and silver embroidery, designed specifically for her over the past 3 weeks. It had long sleeves that covered her scars, not to hide them, Taylor had insisted, but to reveal them on her terms. The neckline was modest, elegant, and the skirt flowed like water when she moved. She looked like a queen. She looked like someone who belonged. "Oh, baby," Sarah whispered when Lynette finally emerged fully dressed. "You're beautiful. I look like I'm playing dress-up. You look like exactly what you are, the Alpha King's mate." Sarah adjusted the pendant Taylor had given her, making sure it lay perfectly centered. "Now, are you ready for the most important day of your life?" No. She would never be ready. But Lynette nodded anyway, because ready or not, the ceremony was happening. The ritual took place in the capital's Grand Hall, a massive stone structure that could hold 1,000 wolves comfortably. And judging by the crowd packed inside when Lynette arrived, they'd hit capacity. Every Alpha in the kingdom was present, flanked by their Lunas and highest-ranking pack members. Representatives from the Werewolf Council sat in places of honor, and at the front, standing on a raised dais before an altar dedicated to the moon goddess, stood Taylor. He was dressed in formal Alpha King attire, all black with silver embroidery that matched her dress, and a crown that caught the light and declared him sovereign. But when his eyes found hers across the crowded hall, all Lynette could see was the man who'd fallen to his knees before her and called her mate. The man she loved. The processional music began a haunting melody that predated written history, passed down through generations of Luna ceremonies. Lynette took a deep breath and began to walk. One step, another. The crowd parted before her, every eye tracking her movement. She kept her gaze locked on Taylor, using him as her anchor, her North Star, her reason for putting one foot in front of the other. "Don't trip, don't stumble, don't give them a reason to doubt you." Halfway down the aisle, she heard it, a whisper that wasn't quite quiet enough. "She's wolfless. How can she be queen?" Lynette's step faltered. Just for a second, just long enough for doubt to creep in, but then she felt it, a pulse through the bond. Taylor's absolute certainty. His unwavering belief in her. "You've got this, little one. I'm right here." She straightened her shoulders and kept walking. When she finally reached the dais, Taylor extended his hand. She took it, let him help her up the steps, and together they turned to face the officiant, an ancient wolf named Elder Nestor who'd presided over Luna ceremonies for 50 years. "We gather today," Elder Nestor's voice carried through the hall, "to witness the sacred union of Alpha King Taylor Burke and his chosen mate, Lynette Riggs, to bind them before the moon goddess and crown her as Luna Queen of all packs." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "If any here would challenge this union, speak now or forever hold your peace." Lynette's heart stopped. This was the moment where someone could object, could challenge the validity of their bond, could demand proof that a wolfless girl could truly be mated to an alpha king. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 20. Then, from the back of the hall, someone stood. Alpha Augustin Ochoa, ruler of the Mountain Ridge Pack and one of the most traditional alphas in the kingdom. "I challenge this union." The hall erupted in whispers. Taylor's grip on Lynette's hand tightened, his wolf rising in his eyes. But before he could speak, Elder Nestor raised a hand for silence. "State your challenge, Alpha Augustin." "The girl is wolfless," Augustin's voice carried clearly. "The mate bond requires 2 wolves to function properly. Without her wolf, how can we be certain the bond is genuine? How can we crown someone queen who cannot shift, cannot hunt, cannot fulfill the most basic requirements of a Luna?" More whispers. Lynette felt her chest tighten, felt 18 years of being told she wasn't enough come rushing back. But Taylor's hand was warm in hers, and through the bond, she felt his fury not at her but on her behalf. "The bond is genuine," Taylor said, his voice vibrating with barely contained rage. "I felt it the moment I saw her. Every alpha in this hall knows what the mate bond feels like. It's unmistakable, and I'm telling you, as your king, that Lynette is my mate." "With respect, your majesty," another alpha stood, Rolando Tran of the Eastern Plains Pack. "How can a Luna protect her pack without a wolf? How can she lead warriors, defend territory, enforce pack law? The same way I've survived 18 years of abuse without a wolf." Lynette's voice rang out before she could stop herself. Every eye in the hall swung to her, and for a moment, she wanted to shrink back, to apologize for speaking. But Taylor squeezed her hand, and she found her courage. "You ask how I can be Luna without a wolf?" She looked directly at Augustin, then at Rolando, then let her gaze sweep across the assembled alphas. "I've spent my entire life powerless. I've been beaten, burned, and broken by wolves, who thought my lack of shifting made me worthless. I've survived things that would have broken most of you, and I did it without claws, without fangs, without anything except determination and hope." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "You think a Luna needs to be able to shift to protect her pack? I think a Luna needs to understand what it's like to be vulnerable, to know what it feels like when those in power abuse their strength, to have compassion for pack members who can't defend themselves." She took a step forward, and Taylor moved with her, a united front. "I will never be able to lead warriors into battle. I will never shift into a wolf and hunt down rogues. But I can ensure that no pack member under my protection ever feels the way I felt, worthless, invisible, alone. I can create laws that protect the vulnerable. I can build a kingdom where strength isn't the only thing that matters." The hall was utterly silent now. "And if that's not enough for you," Lynette continued, "if you truly believe that a queen needs a wolf to be valid, then challenge me. Challenge the Alpha King's choice, and see what happens when you try to take away the one good thing the moon goddess has ever given me." The threat in her voice surprised even her. But she meant it. She would fight for this, for Taylor, for their bond, for the future they could build together. Alpha Augustin stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he dropped to one knee. "I withdraw my challenge. Forgive me, my queen." I spoke from tradition rather than wisdom. One by one, the other alphas followed suit. Rolando knelt. Then others. Until every alpha in the hall, even those who'd looked skeptical, had dropped to one knee in recognition of their queen. Lynette felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. Queens didn't cry during their coronation. "If there are no further challenges," Elder Nestor said, a smile playing at his lips, "we will proceed with the ceremony." The ritual itself was beautiful. Taylor and Lynette recited vows that dated back centuries, promises to protect, to honor, to lead with wisdom and strength. They exchanged marks, Taylor gently biting her neck to leave his alpha mark, a claim that would tell every wolf in the kingdom she was his. The bite should have hurt, but instead, it sent warmth flooding through her, solidifying the bond until she could feel him in her soul as clearly as she felt her own heartbeat. Then came the crowning. Elder Nestor lifted a silver crown from the altar, delicate and beautiful, designed specifically for Lynette. By the power vested in me by the Moon Goddess and the Werewolf Council, I crown you Luna, Queen of all Packs. May you rule with wisdom, compassion, and strength. The crown settled on her head, surprisingly light despite its significance. Rise, Queen Lynette, Elder Nestor commanded, and face your kingdom. Taylor helped her stand, his eyes shining with pride and love. Together they turned to face the assembled alphas and pack members. All hail Queen Lynette, Elder Nestor's voice boomed. Luna of the Alpha King, protector of all packs, chosen by the Moon Goddess herself. All hail Queen Lynette. The hall erupted in echoes, hundreds of voices acknowledging her position, her power, her worth. And standing there with a crown on her head and her mate's hand in hers, Lynette finally believed what everyone had been trying to tell her for 3 weeks. She wasn't broken. She wasn't worthless. She wasn't defective. She was queen. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night. Alphas who'd challenged her earlier approached to apologize, to swear their loyalty, to admit they'd been wrong. Pack members shared stories of their own struggles, thanking her for showing that strength came in many forms. Young wolves, especially those who felt like outsiders in their own packs, looked at her with hope in their eyes, as if her existence proved they could be more than their circumstances. But the moment Lynette treasured most came near the end of the evening, when Taylor pulled her onto the dance floor for their first official dance as king and queen. "How does it feel?" he asked as they swayed to music that seemed written just for them. Surreal, terrifying, perfect. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and sure. "I keep waiting to wake up and discover this was all a dream. If it's a dream, then we're both having it." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, careful not to disturb her crown. "I'm so proud of you, little one. The way you stood up to those alphas, the way you defended your right to be here, you were magnificent. I was scared. Being scared doesn't make you any less brave. It makes you human." He pulled back to meet her eyes. "Well, werewolf. Sort of. You know what I mean." She laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuine joy. "I do. I love you," Taylor said, his voice going serious. "I loved you when you were a scared kitchen girl trying to be invisible. I loved you when you showed mercy to wolves who'd tormented you. I loved you when you stood before the kingdom and demanded respect, and I'll love you through every challenge we face from here on out. Even when I mess up? Because I will. I have no idea what I'm doing, especially when you mess up, because that's when you'll need me most." He spun her gently, and her dress flared out like water catching light. "We're partners now, Lynette. In ruling, in life, in everything. Your struggles are mine, your victories are mine, your future is mine, and yours is mine," she whispered back, finally understanding what the mate bond truly meant. Not ownership, but partnership, not possession, but choice. They danced until the moon hung high overhead, full and bright, and watching over them like the goddess herself was smiling. And as the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Taylor led Lynette to a balcony overlooking the capital. "Look," he said, gesturing to the city spread before them. "Your kingdom." Lynette looked out at the thousands of lights representing thousands of lives, wolves and humans and everything in between, all living under her protection now. The responsibility should have been crushing. Instead, it felt like purpose. "Our kingdom," she corrected. "We do this together." "Together," Taylor agreed, pulling her close. "Always together." And there, on a balcony under a full moon, wearing a crown that represented everything she'd never thought she could be, Lynette Riggs, once the wolfless daughter of an Omega Maid, once the invisible girl in the kitchen, once the broken creature everyone had overlooked, finally understood her worth. She was loved. She was powerful. She was queen. And her story, the story of a girl who survived the impossible and came out stronger, was just beginning. As we reach the end of Lynette's journey from invisible to unforgettable, I want to ask you this. What would you have done in her position? Would you have found the strength to show mercy to those who showed you none? Drop your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, A like would mean the world. Until next time, remember, your scars don't define your worth.